Hello, thank you for joining me as I read some more of my story, Revelation. Okay, Teutonic. I love you, Garrison said as he gently kissed Jeanette as they laid in bed holding each other. He was staring at her with so much love in his eyes. You are everything to me. I have never loved anyone like this. He stood up and walked over to the wardrobe and began to pull out his clothes. Garrison, my dear, I will always be yours, she told him as she also got out of bed. We best be hurrying, getting downstairs, 'cause your father is expecting us. Yes, my darling, I will hurry. Jeanette walked over to her vanity and picked up her brush. She began brushing her hair as she watched Garrison get dressed. He told her that he would see her downstairs, and she smiled at him and turned to look at herself in the mirror. The eyes looking back at her are glowing red embers. Its skin looked smooth and shiny, with scales like a snake. Its teeth are a tangled mass of jagged daggers. A long, smooth tongue slides out of the mouth, running itself across them. Jeanette woke up screaming as she sat up in bed crying. Sandra sat up too and hugged her tightly. It was just a bad dream, she told her. I don't like my dreams. I said my prayers and I still had bad dreams. That always end up with me facing a hideous creature in the mirror. Sandra got up and went to her dresser to get her hand mirror, and she handed it to Jeanette. See, you still have your own reflection. Sandra hugged her sister again and told her that everything was going to be okay. It's very early in the morning, and Sandra had been up for about 2 hours already, making sure everything was ready to go ashore. They would be in New York very soon. Sandra quietly told Jeanette, please get up and start getting ready. We will be in port soon. Put this on your face and hands and rub it in. It will help protect your skin from the sun. Where did you get this stuff? Jeanette asked. I made it out of zinc oxide and lead powder and mixed it together with some coconut oil. I call it sun cream, Sandra explained. Jeanette gathered her things and went into the bathroom. Sandra finished packing her bags. Christian looked up at Sandra and said, thank you. I am very thankful that you are both in my life. I want you to know that I will do whatever it takes to help you, even if this quest takes my own life. She walked over to the chair that he was in. Christian, stop. You're going to make me cry. You are like our brother that we never had. She leaned down and hugged his neck. Here, I made some sun cream for you too. Jeanette came out of the bathroom. Christian got up from his easy chair and went in to get ready. Sandra told them that on their way to Connecticut they would need to make several stops. When she received the deed from Mr. Whitmore, they will have some land of their own. Charles Whitmore told her that there was a perfect place of land for them just outside of Norwich, Connecticut. There is a knock on the cabin door. Who is it? Sandra asked. It is I, Charles Whitmore, he announced as Sandra opened the door. Can all of you accompany for breakfast? I would like to go over the deed with you, Sandra. She shook her head no. We can't meet you right now. We're about to dock and have to find us some suitable lodgings. Say no more. I can get you some rooms at the Waldorf Astoria, he told her. Oh, no, I couldn't let you do that. Why not? I already have the rooms. He laughed. She turned toward him. How could you have them already? She replied in disbelief. He crossed his arms over his chest. Well, I was expecting some guests, but they will not be able to meet me after all. So I would like to extend them to you and your family. Well, okay then. I suppose it will be all right. Thank you, Mr. Whitmore, she relented. He turned and looked at Jeanette. Please call me Charles. So this is your beautiful sister. He bowed and he took her hand. Jeanette nodded her head and smiled. I will have some of my men get all of your belongings and take them to the hotel. So now, will I see you topside for breakfast? They all smiled and nodded. Charles turned and left the room. Charles Whitmore. Charles Whitmore is a very wealthy land developer from New England. He's 54 years old and stands 5'10", has brown hair and blue eyes. He has been married 3 times and has 4 children. He has a very good eye when it comes to making money and likes to have beautiful women on his arm. So when he met Sandra, he immediately felt that with her by his side, he could have both. He was very attracted to her and was very impressed with her business attributes as well. He owned many properties and had many others waiting on his calendar just for moments like this. "Are you sure that you two are not sweethearts?" Christian asked with a little grin. Sandra smiled and shook her head. "He's very sweet, but I don't have time for a suitor. We have a lot to do, and I'm going to need both of you to stay the course and be focused on this venture," Sandra said as they left the room for breakfast. "You've got it," Christian replied. "Sandra, you know that I've always been here for you." Jeanette replied, "Yes, I know, Jeanette, and I love you so very much. Evil will try to work its way in any nook or cranny that we give it. We must be consistent and diligent in our tasks." They all eat and enjoy visiting with Mr. Whitmore. The ship arrives at the port of New York. They are so excited to see Manhattan Island. The harbor and river surrounding Manhattan were a busy, chaotic point of arrival for dozens of ships each day. Sandra had heard so much about Castle Garden. When it opened as an immigration processing station, the country had already seen a huge influx of German, Irish, and other immigrants. To see it with her own eyes was truly amazing. She only wished it hadn't happened under different circumstances. Mr. Whitmore hailed them a buggy, and they loaded it with all their belongings. A short time later, they arrived at the Waldorf Astoria Hotel on Fifth Avenue. Christian looked up at the 13-story hotel and just shook his head in disbelief. They were all taken aback by the huge chandelier hanging in the lobby. Jeanette and Sandra laughed when Christian said, "That light is bigger than the buggy we rode over here in." They were all in awe of the beautiful murals painted on the ceilings, and as they walked through the silver corridor to the elevator, there were more wonders than they could see in a single day. Charles walked them up to their private suite. "You can order anything that you want from room service. We will be leaving exceedingly early in the morning for Norwich, Connecticut." Jeanette and Kristen turned toward him and said, "Room service?" Charles laughed as he helped them into their suite. He walked over to a hand-carved table in the foyer and picked up a menu and handed it to Sandra. "Here, read this and order some dinner, and they will bring it right to your room." Jeanette and Kristen walked around the room in amazement. "This room is as big as a house," Kristen stated. Sandra and Charles laughed. "Thank you again, Charles. I do not know how we will ever be able to repay you for this," Sandra told him, as they both walked back to the door. "I will think of something, Sandra," Charles said as he raised his eyebrows up and down. With that, she hurried him out and closed the door. She walked around the room and slowly worked her way to the window. She could not believe they were in New York. Even though it was an overcast day, Sandra still thought that it was one of the most beautiful places she had ever seen. They were at the New York Central Railroad station before 5:30 in the morning to catch the train to Norwich, Connecticut. They rode in a private compartment. When they reached Norwich, Charles found them suitable belongings or lodgings. Sandra wanted to leave almost as soon as they put their bags into their rooms. She was anxious to see the property that she wanted to purchase from Mr. Whitmore. The buggy pulled to a stop. The driver opened the door, and Sandra put out her hand, and he helped her out of the buggy. She opened her parasol and walked toward a large building next to the main drive. "As you can see, there is plenty of room here to use this building for a boarding house," Charles said as he opened the front door. "Oh my, yes, this is grand, just grand." She spun herself around to see the foyer. 1,800 acres, and I have negotiated the price at 25 cents an acre. That is a bargain. He walked a few steps behind her, but still quite a large sum of money, Sandra, Charles told her. "Yes, that is quite a bit of money, but it will be worth it," Sandra acknowledged. Charles watched Sandra as she looked over the place, and he thought to himself how wonderfully bold and full of life she was. He could see her making this land into a very lucrative venture. You dream big, Sandra, so here's what I'm going to do for you. She spun around to face him and asked, "What are you going to do for me, Charles?" He eagerly replied, "I'm going to invest into your venture." She shook her head. "I could not ask you to do that." "You're not asking me to. I just know a good investment when I see it." Charles could not take no for an answer. "I was just wanting to help you. It's going to take a lot to get this place up and running." "Thank you, but no. I have the money to buy this land." "Yes, I know you do, but I have the money to make it great." Sandra stopped walking and stared straight at the staircase and then bit her lip. She thought about everything else that would be involved in this land. There is more to this land, just like you said, Charles. That is why I can't involve you in this." She shook her head no. "But Sandra," he begged. "No, Charles." And she turned to face him. He stuck his lower lip out and walked toward her. He stopped and reached out his hand. "Look, I have nothing up my sleeve. Just a hand is all I'm offering." She looked back at him and shrugged her shoulders. He walked and stood right in front of her. "You're the most exciting woman I've ever met in my life." "Charles, there are things you don't know about me or my family." And she backed away from him. "And why we came to America." "I don't care about what happened in your past and why you came to America. I'm just glad you did. I'm very loyal, and I've kept secrets for royalty, for God's sakes. I'm trying to tell you that you can tell me anything, Sandra, and it won't matter. I will never judge you. That is God's job, not mine." "Charles, you're a sweet man, and I really enjoy your company, but you don't know what you're asking. I fear that if you knew the truth about me and my family, you would turn and run." Charles changed the subject. "Let's walk around the rest of the property." And they walk around the house and see a large barn and a stable. A little further back is a nice plot where they once had a vegetable garden. And right next to the garden is a large chicken coop and run. Sandra can hardly wait to get started and fix this place up. "All right, Charles, you win. I will let you help us. No questions. This is my family and our secrets. You can never ask, or this deal will be null and void," she demanded. "Deal," he said. Sandra reached out her hand and said, Put her there, partner." He picked her up and swung her around and kissed her on the cheek. They walked back to the buggy, and he helped her get into her seat. They hardly spoke all the way back to town. Sandra had so much on her mind as she wrote into her journal. Charles didn't mind at all. He was happy just to stare at her beautiful face. Thank you for joining me, and I hope that you'll come back next week as I read some more. And I'm sorry I made so many mistakes, but I don't know.